Hi, welcome to the coaching game.
Hi.
Look who's back.
What do you mean, look who's back? I'm a fixture. Coaches creating change.
There
Here
you
we
go.
are.
Cherry
Yeah.
Yoffe, and I'm Laurie
Thank you.
Lawson. How you doing out there?
And welcome
Yeah.
to Coaches Creating Change. And this week,
We are
we're
doing
direct communication. Wow.
I know. You know, we were talking just before the show, and we realized this is really key for almost all because what we're trying to do is do the ICF core competencies and match them with the great points of view cards. But we realized that direct communication is really an underlying piece of all of the core competencies. And I don't know why it took us that long to realize it, but it's like...
Yes, you're absolutely right. That when I looked at it and looked at some of the quotes that we'll go through a little later, it's all about the building of trust and intimacy, and that goes back to the whole beginning and co-creating the relationship with establishing trust and intimacy.
Getting the
and
contract,
then,
agreeing on what you're going to talk
exactly.
about. Yeah.
And coaching presence. You have to be present. And then what we're at now is the communicating effectively portion, which we did active listening, powerful questioning, and now we come to direct communication.
And just to complicate it a little bit more, the points of view card is communication without heads. So it's also, not only are we talking about what you say, but it's like how you say it, your nonverbal communication. So it's a pretty big package. It's a pretty big package
To unwrap.
to unwrap. But once you get it down, oh, okay. But this is. I'm so glad that we talked about that and said, you know what? Terry came up with, she was, this is really a part of everything. I go, you know what? You're right.
It's the building blocks. But
Yeah.
So the definition for direct communication from a coaching perspective, and it could be anything, is communicating effectively during coaching sessions and using language that has the greatest positive impact on the client. And I think one thing we talked about, and I want to kind of interject here, is we sit here and we're coaches and we talk about coaching and coaching with clients, but all of this is about real life.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I mean,
It's, we're not just coaches. If you think about all of the core competencies as you go out in the world in your personal life, what would that be like? Establishing good relationships based on trust, respect, and integrity, and being present and active listening.
speaking up and saying what you need and want. And we're going to talk about that. Terry's got a whole thing on that. But
and
speaking up and saying what you want and communicating it effectively without putting someone else off.
Exactly. That's, direct communication, I think, scares a lot of people. Most people don't like to engage in directness, if you will, in communication. They'd rather skirt the issue, they'd rather walk away, they'd rather go jump off a cliff, anything
besides
other than
say the real deal.
really saying what's true in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, personally, extremely frustrating in personal life when you want to be vulnerable in how you communicate, and it's not reciprocated on many levels. And I think we both wanted to get across that what we talk about isn't just coaching, it's real life.
Yeah. And that is the beauty of, I think, the profession of coaching. It's like, one, you can't help but coach yourself while you're coaching someone else. It's like, oh, in my head, I'm doing that too. It's like, okay. And two, the lesson, you just keep learning and you just keep improving. And that's what I tell, because I have mentees that I deal with, and that's what I tell them. Even if you don't ever establish a coaching business, whatever you're going to do from here on out is going to be enhanced, more effective, and probably more honest too. Just more honest because you're more aware of what needs to be done.
And to just pick up on what you just said, a lot of coaching schools are finding people coming to take the courses are not looking to be coaches. They are in businesses where learning all of this could help them 100% in their business, whether with clients, whether with employees, as leaders. What could be more effective than these competencies?
Managers are realizing that, that you have a bunch of diverse people, and how do you get everybody on the same team, so to speak, and on the same wavelength? And people, sometimes coaches are required now, in businesses, because it's like we need to come together, and nobody really knows how to communicate effectively. And that's what this one is all about. This core competency is like how to communicate and get your point across, and not manipulate people, but get people to understand what you are looking for, so that they can give you what you need and you can give them what they need.
Exactly. And in the coaching relationship, it's really listening, going back to active listening, to what the client is saying and not saying.
Yes.
And being able to pick up on what are they not saying that's so important to be said here. And they may not know it. It's not that they're avoiding it. They just might not know how to get around to saying it.
That's it. One of the markers for this is like the coach's language is generally clear and concise. And that's a hard one. It's like, because sometimes and I find when I stumble, it's because, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. I don't want to really say that out loud. It's like, I don't want to, make somebody angry. But I think if you can learn how to communicate directly, like you were saying, then your head doesn't get muddled up in that, and you can be concise and clear. And if you're honest and vulnerable, a word I know you're going to use, if you're honest and vulnerable about what you really want and need, it's like, wow, you know what, I wish I knew how to do what you do, but what I need is for you to tell me and get this project out for also while we're at it. Yeah.
Exactly. No, exactly what you're saying in many ways. And one of the things that certainly might not be with clients, but personally, instead of putting somebody on the spot, I will always put it on myself and say, so from my experience, this way you're coming from your experience and you're not doing that, pointing a finger at somebody. And in working with clients, I find that one of the things I say, so what I might be hearing, again, I'm not attached to anything, sounds like whatever, and I just had that with someone this morning. I used a word that he didn't use, but he used another word. So it was almost the same, but he came up with his own word.
Yes, and what's a part of this is also, if you use the client's language, then he knows you have heard him. You might have liked your word better, and it might have been more appropriate. But if he's got a word that means the same, then by all means use that word. And because it says, okay, I'm hearing you, and I'm in agreement with you, or at least I understand what you're saying, and we're going to use this word from here on out. And that's a part of direct communication too.
Yeah, it's the coach's responsibility, as we know, to be able to reflect back what the client is saying so they know they've been heard.
Yes.
And I always say, so this is what I think I hear, what it sounds like, my interpretation, and then I will throw it back on them and say, so what are your thoughts? What are you hearing?
Yes.
I'm not attached to anything. And this morning, this person said, I wouldn't use that particular word, but here's a word that resonates with me. And that was fine. But we went down the same path, different wording.
Different word, but in the coaching relationship, it's like whatever the client wants.
Right.
It's like what the client is going to understand. And in real life, it's like, why would you, it's like my word is better. Who cares? As long as you're both talking about the same thing and this word has meaning to your other person that you're talking to, why would you insist on a word? So reflecting the client's language is a great way to say, yeah, we're on the same page. I hear you.
Right.
I hear you, and we're going to the same place.
Exactly. And in real life, it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, what I've learned through coaching and through my life's paths is it's not about making someone wrong, which is, we all want to do that. No,
I want to be right.
Yeah,
I don't care if you're
exactly.
wrong. I want to be right.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's not about making someone wrong. You know, you come up with an idea and, you know, somebody has said something, and then what we all do is we say, yes, but. You know,
which means
that
I've totally dismissed everything you said. Yes.
Exactly. Instead of I say now and, which is the link.
There's a room for all.
Right,
Yes.
that I hear you, and here's another possibility.
I love that. So one simple thing, if you get nothing else out of this show, that's so good. But we'll just totally discount everything that just
it's
says.
dismissive.
And will include. So it's like, yes, and what are your thoughts? Yes, and, you know, here's how I feel. Just to include everybody. Let's put another spin on it. What we try to do as coaches, and what we should do as humans, is rather than, take the positive path if you can, rather than go, well, wow, what did you do? What did you do wrong? It's like, what did you do right? You know? And then, what could you do better? You know? And keep it on a positive note, as opposed to going in there with the negative and you know, it's like, wow, this was all wrong. Here's how I want you to do it. It's like, well, you know, here's what you did right. You know, and we have in IPEC, which is my training, we have a sandwich thing. You start with the good stuff, you put a little criticism in the middle, and then you end with the good stuff. So everybody feels okay.
That's a good image.
Yeah, it's like,
that's
you
a
know,
good image.
Put it in the between, and it goes down a little better, so to speak.
Yeah. Shall I include a quote?
Sure.
Oh, which one
Karen
should I
loves
use?
Quotes.
I'm going to do Stephen Covey, who is a writer and written many books.
7 Habits of...
Yeah.
What is it?
American
7 Habits of
Educated.
Happy People? I don't know.
Trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It's the foundational principle that holds all relationships.
Wow.
So if we go back to co-creating the relationship and we look at establishing trust and intimacy, if you have that, then there's room for direct communication.
Yes, yes. True, and that's trusting yourself as well as the other person. And it's like trusting, and we try that with coaching too. It's like if you come from a pure heart, you can't go wrong, you know, just if your intentions are good. So, yeah, and I think that's what started us talking about this. It's like, yeah, that quote, it's like, okay, trusting in, and then we said, well, it'll work for this one, it'll work for active listening.
Right. Exactly.
Communication is just in there, doing its thing.
I think it's an overarching umbrella. You know, that communication, I mean, is the glue. We all communicate, whatever level we do it, whether it's verbally or it's even body language.
Yeah.
You know, how we hold ourselves when we talk to people, how we look at them, how we interact,
or
how
don't,
we connect, or don't.
If you're talking to somebody and they're looking over your right shoulder, it's like, he's gone. He's not listening to me. Why am I wasting my verbal energy here? Things like this. It's like how you, if you're in a meeting, how you cross your legs. Are they toward the person? Or are they against the person? Sitting. We have a president who does this occasionally, sitting like this, and it's a little closed off. It's like, no, not listening, or not going to change. Yeah. So or wide open. Little more difficult with the legs with females, but it's just like sitting back and relaxing and talking. Yeah, the nonverbal communication. We could go on for tons of shows with
definitely.
that. And it's fascinating because you don't realize. I used to tilt my head in every picture from age 16 to, God, I don't know, 30 at least. My head would be tilted. And I go, yeah, that's cute, but is that what you want to do in business? It's like, no. So then I try to keep it straight. Yeah, but you just don't realize.
It's cues, right?
Yeah,
and what people get when they meet you. Are you really open or are you closed? And also,
yes,
you don't have to be like that, but people get it on some level. And then they react to that trigger.
And you may not even realize you're getting, I never realized, again, how important a handshake was. It's like, do you want a little mealy handshake?
Yeah.
Do you want a real hand? Do you want to kill somebody with?
Right.
Or is there something in between, you know? But yeah, there are things that you don't even realize you're picking up the cues. But it's like, okay, he's not listening to me. Oh, this isn't a strong person. You know, it just things,
Exactly.
and you put it in your head, and then your communication has been, I won't say blocked, but it's been muddled up with the cues that you got from the person. They may be saying something very strong, but it's like, really? With that little shaky hand? I don't know.
Yeah. It's, you know, everyone has a first impression. You know, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Exactly.
And when I hear you talk about, you know, people looking above, I always think of networking. That's a perfect example. We all have gone to some networking, and you're talking to them and trying to build a conversation.
And they're looking around.
Everywhere, which means
I'm looking for somebody else.
Right, right. You know, who's more important than
exactly.
You? You know,
exactly, yeah.
You know, the thing about coaching is, I coach by phone, so I have an even, I guess, tougher, we all do, those of us that coach by phone, is to really lean in and listen, because we don't see a client's body language at all, but we pick up their tone of voice. How do they answer the phone? You can hear in their voice, and that's one thing that I think as coaches we've been trained to do, is to really listen, especially if you're not seeing them in person.
In fairness to coaching schools, that's what they hone in on. Here's your listening skills. How are you, you know, because this is going to be in America. Now in Europe, you're in a cafe, you know, and the Starbucks is a favorite coaching place. Yeah, yeah. People from other countries just can't believe we actually have a profession where you sit on the phone and talk, but we do. So yeah, but in fairness to coaching schools, they do hone in. So how do we establish that trust? One of the ways is by being vulnerable, like we were talking about, and sharing like your observations and your thoughts, and not being afraid to be wrong about it. You know, it's like, even if you have intuition, I'm a little shaky on my intuition. I think I have good intuition, but I'm not sure I would share it, and that's where I need to improve. But it's like, I'm just going, you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing a little bit of a lack of willingness to tell your boss what you really think. And it's like, how do you feel about what I just said? And that opens up doors. It's like, or you can share your own thing. It's like, I understand telling your boss that, you know, what's really going on is risky, but what are the rewards? However you're going to do it, and just to let the person know that I hear you. Don't be afraid to share what you're hearing.
And it's also how you're going to approach your boss.
Yeah, oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's not so much, it's also what you want to share, but it's how you're going to do it, and what ways. And it's also what I look at, it's not only the communication, but the desired outcome, especially in business. What do you, or even if you've got a personal situation and you're going in to talk to somebody, what do you want the end result to be? And trying to set up the communication so it includes that desired outcome that you're looking for.
And you know what? That's so interesting, because it's a dance. It's a dance. You want to go in open. You don't want to go in with like rigid rules. Okay, this has to happen. Check, check, check. But you want to go in open to suggestions. But you do want to have a general idea. What's the point of the meeting? You know, and how am I going? I guess it depends on the scope of the meeting too. If you're in there to sell a project, then yeah, you've got your checkpoints and you want to get them off. If you're in there to, I don't know what, you want to be a little open to hear what your boss thinks of the project. Then you want to be a little open, even though you want to sell your idea. So it's a dance. A lot of coaching is a dance.
It is. It is a dance. Certainly, you're dancing in the moment with the client, and it's really all about the client. It's not about the coach. It's all about the client and helping them by whatever of these competencies we've been talking about, for them to get to their desired outcome, and whatever that is that they choose for. And, you know, as a coach, making sure we are in sync with our client, that we're listening, that we're picking up on the innuendos, that we are using their language and not our language,
Yes,
you know, in some ways.
Definitely. That goes back to what you said. You know, if he's got a better word, let him use his word, and that's
Right.
okay. Because to him, that has meaning. Our word may not have meaning to him, but that's a great point. And also, what we forget in the coaching thing. I don't know if this rings true in real life, but the person who should be doing the talking, most of the talking, is the client. We're here to facilitate thoughts and try to help people get them in order and move them along to the next step. But so when when you're tempted to go, yeah, you know how I lose weight, and you go into this whole thing, it's like, no, they let them talk.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
let them talk. I mean, that's being vulnerable, but that's also being not in the interest of the client. So it's
Right.
yeah, that makes it again a delicate dance, because then you have clients who are stuck in the box. We love to say think out of the box, but they're stuck in this. The parameters are very small where they're thinking, and you've got to come and pull them out. And sometimes you even have to stop them and interrupt them. That's a dance. How do you do that?
Yeah, they get lost in their story.
Yes,
You know, and of course there's nowhere to go in the story.
No, so the best, what I've found is I sometimes do is say, you know what, let me stop you because I want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying, and then ask them a question after I wrap
Right.
it up, you know.
Right.
Is that right? Because here's what I'd like you to think about. But that's delicate too. It's like you have to, you just have to gauge it. But I think if you're truly listening, and you really want to communicate, then I think you're going to get your cues from how you're feeling inside and what the person's saying also.
Right.
It's a combination. It's
absolutely.
like, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. I will tell you that. It's like
It's,
at the beginning, it's like, oh, this is too much to remember. But
It becomes second nature if you just sit back and trust your instincts. You know, and know what's there, and always about reflecting back to the client what you've heard,
right.
and you know, and then asking, so what does this mean? What are your thoughts? So that there's no misinterpretation of the communication that you're hearing.
Excellent point, because as we were saying before, it's like you do coach yourself as you're coaching. My favorite mantra is shut up, Laurie, let them talk. You know, I do that all the time. But it's like, yes, because you can go off on a tangent in your head. So just make a note. It's like, oh, saying no.
Right.
And deal with
I
your
do.
stuff later. You know? It's like, but right now, it's like, you're right. Concentrate on the client, because that's what you're there. And in everyday communication, I have a tendency, because I get so excited, I'll interrupt somebody and start talking, right? And it's like, no, let them finish, and then I can interrupt.
Right.
But
So we all want to jump in.
Yeah, it's like, me too. That's how it works for me. And so it's consciousness and trusting that there'll be enough time for everybody to talk. You know.
I agree, and I think that clients want to partner with a coach.
Word.
Partner
Great
in
word.
that they don't want just a question person.
Oh yeah.
You know, where it used to be that they want somebody to talk to them and maybe not give advice, but to kind of work with them and dance with them.
Absolutely.
So that you really invested.
Good word.
Both are invested 100% in this relationship.
And what a great relationship that is. If you've got a goal and you're invested in it, but you've got a partner that invests in it, which is your coach, it's like, oh my gosh. And that's just the relationship that you're trying to establish. Different than psychotherapy and things like that, because where you get to talk and talk and talk, and you know, there might be a question in between. That's probably effective in many ways, but what the coach is I love your word, partnering. It's like you're a partner. It's like, okay, let's get this done, you know?
Right.
You want to get this done? Let's do it. Here's how we're going to do it. And have you thought about this? And what about this? And keep prodding until you, till something happens and someone goes, oh, okay.
It's all about them coming, you can work with them, but it's helping them look at what's going on, but for them to come up with their own answers.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing that used to drive me crazy. When I was starting to be a coach, it was like, and so people would go out there and go, and you have all the answers.
Right.
And it's like, well, then if I have all the answers, why am I paying you to be my coach?
Right.
It's like, so,
Right.
Realizing that, yes, I might have the answer that's going to work for me, but let's find out what's going to work for you. So it's yes, they do have the answers, but don't tell them that. It's like, because they're going to go, no, I don't, because why am I here if I have all the answers? So what's your third quote?
Well, I only did one, but here's Tony Robbins. To effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world, and
yes.
use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others.
That's exactly what we were talking with the words. It's like,
Right.
use their words, and if you understand them, and if you don't, feel free to say, I don't have meaning for that word. What does that word mean? Or what does that word mean to you? As opposed to, I know what it means.
Right.
What's it mean to you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We all have different perceptions
Yes.
of words and thoughts. And what our perception is might be different than theirs. And it's theirs that matters, not ours.
Right, right.
So it's always clarifying. That's why always reflecting is making sure that we're on the same page. And I always tell a client, it's not that I don't hear you, but it's making sure we are both on the same page, that I hear exactly what you are saying.
Right. Or that I understand, because it's interesting, and ICF Global is really working on cultural differences, because I know I was assessing something that came from another country, and every line the person said was okay before she finished, and she should ask the next question. And so I counted that as, nah, that's not good, think of another word. And it's like, no, okay is the same for us as going yes. So it's like, yeah, it's an acknowledgement, I heard you, let me move on. And I'm going, oh, see, I didn't know that. And so there are things, so assumptions we can't make, but we could ask, it's like, I don't know if we could ask, why are you saying okay all the time, but.
Exactly, I have worked with international people, so it's really being sure you're on the same page with them and what they're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't hurt with United States folks either, because we all
exactly.
we all have different meanings for everything. I can't believe that we're out of time.
I know.
We spent a lot of time talking and communicating.
Exactly. Direct communication is so valuable and so important.
And we every time we do one of these, we go, oh, this is the best one.
Yeah.
But, so we think they're all good, really. So we will be back next month and tackle yet another one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.